How many of you know an uncle, have a father, or a close relative that's a man who may be having challenges with just confidence or vision and just feeling like life is just wearing them down? Well, if you know anyone like that in your life, I've got the perfect guest that you do not want to miss and hear from. All right, welcome once again to the Business Therapy Show. I'm your host, Brandon Powell. I'm grateful to be here. I have a guest who has this is his third time coming on the show. He is a close friend and business owner. We have Willis with the Fatherhood Leadership Initiative. Good to see you again.
No doubt. Thanks for that invite, man.
All right. His favorite fruit is grapes, so I convinced him to come back on. I told him I'd give him some grapes if he came back on, and so he did. Man, good to see you again, man.
Likewise.
For those that are not familiar with the show, the Business Therapy Show, the purpose of this is basically we bring on entrepreneurs and business owners who have gone through the journey of just learning how to run the business, become successful, all the normal things, right? But along that journey, you experience some ups and downs, some moments of darkness, as I call it, and you get that clarity moment. And Nick is no stranger to that. He understands success, and he has an extremely great gift when it comes to working with men, a man of many talents. And so we brought him back on so he can discuss some new developments and expansion that he has going on, and just to learn more about some of the things that he has going on within his new organization. And so with that being said, we're going to jump right into the questions once again. For those that are less familiar, tell us about what's been going on in Nick Willis's life, your life in the last 6 to 9 months. What's the new developments?
Cool, man. First of all, thank you for the invite. Just so excited, man, because so much momentum has been being built. Since 2019, we've launched the Fatherhood Leadership Initiative. It just started as a group of guys having breakfast together because we was identifying that there were some commonalities in some of the struggles that we were going through. But here's what it turned into. It turned into a nonprofit organization where we focused on confronting some of the challenges that men face. When I say that, people always say, man, what do you mean? And the reality of it is 93% of all suicides come from men. And when I usually give that statistic, people's eyes get big because they don't understand the crisis that men are going through. But in the last 9 months, we've been able to really turn this Fatherhood Leadership Initiative into a vehicle full of momentum. But we have a goal, man. We're going to reach 100,000 men in Collin County as well as Dallas County.
Wow. And I have the privilege of also supporting that vision, being on the board. And I want to hear from your perspective. There was recently a breakfast that took place. Tell us about the name of that breakfast. And in your opinion, how did those men seem to respond to that experience?
Yeah, most definitely. So every month we have a breakfast. Normally is the third Saturday of every month. Go on Eventbrite and make sure you register for the breakfast. But in this particular case, we talked about collateral damage. Brene Brown, one of the authors that I've recently read, she talks about shame as being something that a lot of men are struggling with privately. She said when you deal with shame, what happens is whatever you're dealing with internally often spills over to the relationships around you. So the theme for this past week was collateral damage. And the question was, how are your relationships being impacted by you? Versus the question that we always ask, how are we being impacted by our relationships? So when we shared that concept with the guys, there was a lot of reflection going on. A lot of guys realized that, man, this is something that I've been struggling with in my own life, and perhaps it's having an impact on the people I love.
Wow. Yeah, I was there, and I got a chance to just witness how authentic. I think one of the comments was made, I believe it's by one of my guests that I invited. For those that don't know, I'm pretty competitive, and so if you and I are having a competition on inviting people to events, no worries, I will win, but we'll give you effort for trying. But he mentioned how he watched the people in the room, the men in the room, and he said he felt like it was genuine smiles and genuine applause and affirmation for just the men sharing their thoughts and their expressions.
Yeah. Matter of fact, when he walked into the room, because he had been to a few other events, he walked into the room, and the first thing he said was, "This time it's different."
He did.
Yeah. This time is different, and of course we credit that to Brandon Powell. He's over our hospitality, giving these guys a great experience. But I think it's one of those things when guys come into an environment and they trust you with their stuff. If this is this PG or can I? Okay,
it's PG.
Okay, cool. That's PG. They trust you with their stuff, so you have a responsibility, man, of how you handle them, how you manage them. It's extremely important because it don't take much for a guy to stop trusting you.
Right. You're right. You're exactly right. You know, with that being said, you know, you're at a space where you're turning the corner, you're developing and expanding, and people can see that stage of your life, and some will admire it and some will be envious of it. You know, in your opinion, what would you say if someone could peek behind that curtain? What would you say, how has failure helped shape your skills along your professional journey?
Yeah, so early in life, that's a really good question. Early in life, I didn't mind failing because I had already failed. Here's what I mean. I didn't start school till the 4th grade. I didn't learn how to read till I was 22. I didn't have nothing to lose. I was already losing. So my whole life has been this ambition to become something worth being proud of. And so I'm just excited about that piece of it. I'm not afraid to fail. I'm the type of guy, I jump out there. I started a business. I started a mobile detail business with 2 buckets and some towels that I got from a shop that I had been helping them detail cars. And I grew that business, and I ended up getting everything I need, from a detail van to a trailer to all the components I need to run a business. But it started with 2 buckets and a bunch of towels.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive. Now, for those of you that are listening, if you ever meet Nick, do not leave your towels laying around because he's going to take them. That's what I took away from that message. So you had the courage, right, to step out, and you're discovering and walking in your fullness of your potential. Another question I have for you is, why do you think people in general have a hard time maximizing their potential?
I think it's fear, man.
Yeah.
I think, again, I just spoke to it. I think some people feel like they have something to lose.
Yeah.
I feel like I have lessons to learn.
Yeah.
So it's all about the perspective and how you approach life. I don't think I have anything to lose, bro. You get one life, and what you do with it, or what you attempt to do with it, to God be the glory. You know what I'm saying? But I think at the end of the day, regardless of what you put your hand to do, you do it trusting God, and you do it with this level of confidence that whatever works out, I know I'm in God's hand, bro.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. You know, specifically zooming back in on the breakfast concept, what would you say, if anything, now? Well, I would ask this way: who is the ideal man to attend, and what do you notice that they're inspired by? What are you noticing that they're inspired by when they come, and who is the ideal man to attend something like that?
The ideal man is, I'm talking about when I created it, or the guys that's actually showing up now?
The ones that's showing up now.
Yeah. So the ideal man is a person who has a level of ambition. They have encouragement. They're seeking relationships with other men. They have this, they have a vision for their lives, but not necessarily, they may not have all the tools to accomplish the vision. And they want to find themselves in an environment where they're being encouraged, and there's a lot of masculine energy where these guys can lean on. Those are the guys who are coming out to stuff like this.
Okay. You know, you and I have had conversations about just professional development and personal development. Is there any particular book that you have read that has inspired you in this area of manhood and fatherhood. What book was that, and why did it inspire you?
Yeah, I give you two. I held up 3 fingers, but
You're an overachiever.
I'm an overachiever. I give you 2. The first one is the first book I ever read as an adult. I told you I didn't learn how to read till I was 22. The book was In Pursuit of Purpose by Dr. Miles Monroe. Here's what he said in the book. Here's the whole concept. He says, we understand the basic functions of life, but we don't understand the full capacity. And it was something about that quote that it was churning in my head. And I was like, okay, I'm doing this. I never thought I'd be doing this, but then what's next? And I've always thought there's a higher level for me to go. Mm-hmm. There's even with vision, typically people refer to me as a visionary, but the reality of it is there's some things that I can accomplish that I haven't even thought about yet. So he said we live life by engaging in the basic functions because we don't understand the full capacity of life. Picture a cell phone and you use it to call people. What if you stop there? Somebody had a brilliant idea. Let me turn this into a computer. Let's put a GPS in it. Most people back in the day, they use a phone to call people, text people, and a clock.
Right, right.
That's the first book. The second book is The Way of the Superior Man. Mm-hmm. And here's why. Because in that book that I read over 23 times, and every single time I learned something new, this is what he says. There's 3 levels of masculinity. Level 1, you're selfish. There's nothing wrong with being selfish if that's who you are. Embrace who you are, right? But level 2, you're a compromiser. There's something wrong with being a compromiser. Because if you're a compromiser, then you allow other people's, another person's vision of you to affect you too much. But here's the 3rd level. You have a divine sense of purpose. And that divine sense of purpose, you're not using it to manipulate people. You're not using it to control narratives. You're not using it to be selfish. You're using it so that you can fulfill your God-ordained design. And until you understand what that is, you'll be fluctuating between level 1 and level 2. But there's another level of manhood that I think we all should learn how to pursue.
I agree. Great point. Thinking again about and I'm thinking about practical situations, right, for this topic. I remember during, the breakfast is a lot of good feedback, but this last time I remember a statement made, which was when one of the gentlemen got up, he said, man, I'm not used to being around a bunch of dudes. Mm-hmm. And he was just being honest. And he said, and I'm an introvert. But he began to open up and share challenges in his life. How important do you think it is for men to be in a safe space? And what does it mean to create a safe space? Mm-hmm. And how important is that for men?
Yeah, I think a safe space is everything, bro, because as men, we are taught to be hard and not relational. We're taught to be, you and I joke a lot about competition, which I often win, but that's not the point. The point is we're often taught to compete with each other. And what it does is it causes us to be in performance mode. Look, it causes us to be in performance mode. And when we're in performance mode, we cannot be progressive. Mm-hmm. So Warren Farrell, he has a book called The Boy Crisis. He talks about 3 dynamics that turn wounded boys into wounded men. Number 1, he says, absent father. Number 2, emotional suppression. Number 3, it just left me. Absent father, emotional suppression, and heroism. That's the one, heroism. The idea that I have to show up and save the day. So being in a safe environment allows a man to say, I don't have to save the day. I can be human and I can be accepted without performing for the acceptance.
Wow. Speaking of the performance component, oftentimes men feel like they have to perform in order to feel adequate or enough.
Yeah.
Can you speak to why it's important to separate that as a man?
Yeah, no doubt. I think sometimes, okay, let's start here. I think the benefit of separating that in your journey of becoming a man is simply this, that I go back to the concept of shame. Failure says, I didn't do well at this. Shame says, I'm not enough. So I think the adequacy component is always being rubbed up against us as men, where we find ourselves trying to be enough. And if we find ourselves not being enough, then we try to hide the fact that we're not enough. Mm-hmm. So it kind of cripples our ability to exist as human beings. Again, 75% of all suicide come from men. 93% of those in federal prison are men. 1 in 10 men have mental health issues. Half of them don't even know it. So when you start looking at all these different dynamics, these are symptoms that not just affecting a small group of individuals, these are affecting men at large. Mm-hmm. You know? So we put that in perspective, man, and we understand that we're up against a giant. Yeah. But I guess I'm like David. I got my slingshot and I'm ready to throw my rock.
Yeah, during this time of life, I think we're starting to see a lot more initiatives come up to try to help men, provide services for men.
Yeah.
You have some that are national and some are local. What do you think are the key ingredients to a successful initiative to help men versus some that may not be as effective?
Movement. You gotta challenge men to move and take initiative for themselves, because if you try to do it for them, then you create dependency. And I think something about being a man, it's ingrained in us that we want to take action. We want to solve the puzzle. We want to accomplish this thing. It's part of who God created us to be. We were made in his image. Here's one of the illustrations I often use. I take a person, let's say a realtor, right? They purchase land and they say to themselves, I'm going to tear this house down and make it an empty lot. Well, here's the idea of empty. It's only empty for a little bit. Because over time, the thing that you tear down, it's going to grow something. So if a man is not putting his hand towards something to build and to have movement in his life, mm-hmm. the question is, what's going to occupy the empty spaces? Mm. And a lot of times, if he's not intentionally building something, then it's going to be his insecurity. It's going to be his fears. It's going to be his angers. It's going to be those appetites that multiply him in a way that's detrimental to what his vision is for his life, if he even possessed one. Wow,
that's a great point. And you brought up a good point about that, the idea of wanting to be the one to solve the puzzle.
Yeah.
For those that were not in our live studio audience, earlier we were doing sound check, and I was saying the countdown in Portuguese, and I got stuck on one of the numbers, and someone from the audience wanted to help me, and I said, no, I want to do it. I started crying. I'm just kidding. But it was important to me to finish it on my own because of that same ingrained desire to be able to, solve the challenge for myself. Mm-hmm. And so with that being said, I want to ask this question. When you're answering that last question, I thought about this. We talk about the idea of generational scars. Mm-hmm. And as a man, you don't like the cards that you're dealt. Talk about how, as a man, what process you need to go through to accept the fact that maybe you didn't get everything you needed, and how to overcome that and then realize that you may play a role in the next person's turn. Talk us through that.
Yeah, no doubt. So we have a 5-step process that we go through every single week. We drive it home and we say, men, this is our process for developing leaders. This, to be honest, is really our process for how we should approach life. It starts with discovery. Discovery asks the question, who am I and what have I been shaped by? Sometimes that's scars. Sometimes that's somebody else's pain that they have used as a manipulation sometimes, even sometimes unintentionally. They used it to shape us some kind of way, perhaps to get value from us, perhaps so they can extract us from our usefulness or whatever the case may be. But we have to discover the impact of that. Number 2 is healing. Healing is when I always tell people this, it was Socrates who said that the unexamined life is not even worth living. Healing happens when we're able to look ourselves in the mirror and have the courage to not manipulate what we see. So an unhealed person often will look themselves in the mirror, and instead of being honest about not being healed, what they do is they try to cover up the woundedness. But healing says, nah, I got to confront what's wounded about me, because that's going to shape the relationships you build. You know what I'm saying? And then after healing, there is this alignment piece that I learned in discovery. Discovery said, not just what will shape me, but who am I designed to be? That's why healing is the next step, because I got to deal with that so that I can get to alignment. I have to align myself with who I was designed to be. The 4th stage is activation. I have to actively participate in the things that's going to help me become what was designed to be. And then lastly, there's multiplication, where I begin to help others become who they were designed to be as well.
That's a great point. Great point. For those that are not here in the live studio audience, we have thousands in the background, and they are all nodding and in agreement with what we just shared.
Right.
Why? You've obviously gone through the challenges that you've gone through, but there's some that didn't overcome. It consumed them. Why do you believe, in your case, it didn't consume you?
I didn't stop moving, man.
Yeah.
I didn't stop moving. I was risky in some areas, out of ignorance, not out of, if I could see the risk, I probably wouldn't have made the decision. So ignorance have served me well in some areas. You know what I'm saying? But I think I was willing to be risky because I wanted to be whole. And I think I gave myself to some relationships because I desired to be whole. They didn't all work out. I had to learn some lessons from them in the process. But here's what I did learn how to do. I learned how to disagree and move on.
Yeah.
Disagree and move on. I used to be the guy, when I disagree, I got to stand there and wrestle with, man, I'm trying to get you to understand what I'm saying. I'm trying to, because the relationship was that much, it was that important to me. But I didn't have I was a compromiser. I was level 2. I was compromising. But when I got to the point where my purpose, my vision became priority, I learned how to disagree and move on. Did it hurt? Yep. But I disagreed and then I moved on.
You spend a lot of time, and I know this because we talk, you spend a lot of time privately having candid conversations and transparent conversations with men, many of which are having, personal challenges and trying to figure out life, just like we all are. What would you say has been the most fulfilling experience for you in this area, working with men with Fatherhood Leadership Initiative, or just men in general? What's been the most fulfilling experience for you so far?
Yeah, I like the illustration of building a wall. Say every man has built an imaginary hiding place, right? I enjoy when I'm having a conversation with a man and he step outside of that, because I'm willing to be transparent. I'll never forget, I'm sitting in the car. I had just went through a separation leading up to a divorce. I had just finished a counseling session. I'm in the car, I'm crying, I'm holding the steering wheel, tears flowing down my face, and I'm saying, it's impossible to father from a distance. I ain't say it like that. Just picture snot and slob coming out my mouth, getting all on my shirt.
I remember you did that last week.
Just picture that. And I'm saying to myself, it's impossible to father from a distance.
Yeah.
That's the most transparent I've ever been in my life. But I was that with God. And here's what happened in a quick second. Well, father for the distance. That was the birth of the Fatherhood Leadership Initiative. Here's what happened next, though. When you're talking about what am I proud of? Here's what I'm proud of what happened next. Because after I heard that or felt that or experienced that, and some people say God told me, God gave it to me. I can say that. But after I felt that, I started going about my day and I started seeing wounded men. I'm proud of that because I'm able to have those conversations with those men and they get to step beyond their wounds to share them with me. I've been having conversations with guys all week and they've been opening up, telling me stuff that they haven't told nobody.
Yeah, do you think that is the reason you want to reach so many men? What would you say, if that is the case, what would you say the top 3 pains you want to help solve for men, if you could speak on it that way?
No doubt. I want to see guys reconnected in relationship to God, which will lead to an identity, correcting the identity crisis, which will lead to them being a stability for the calling that they have on their lives and the families that they serve. I think our motto is this: build the inner leader so he can have a greater impact. And sometimes the heartbreaking thing is we have people who having a great impact, but they're internally, they're destroyed.
Yeah, that's a great point. Obviously, you and I, we know we could talk on this subject at length amongst many other things. I hope this gives you all watching this a glimpse of what life has been like for Nick as he's working on this amazing project for men. It is a worthy task. Nick, remind us again how we can get in contact with you, what initiatives we should support, and how, if someone who's watching this has a relative in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, or I wouldn't even say it that way, because we've had people show up to the breakfast, outside of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but they see that much value.
Yeah, that's another cool point. You can go to our website, fliconnect.org. The 3 initiatives that you could contribute to. Number 1 is Target Masters. Target Masters is the group we have for grown men. It was Frederick Douglass who said that it's easier to reach the next generation of children than to repair broken men. I pride myself and our team on the fact that I don't believe God has called us to do what's easy. We don't do it because it's easier, because we're dependent on him throughout the entire process, right? So that's Target Masters. It's about helping men make major and micro adjustments in order to hit the target. When we're not doing Target Masters, breakfast and all that kind of stuff, then we're going out doing Target Masters outings, bowling, archery, shooting range, etc. The next group I want to tell you about is the DART program. This is where we go to college campuses and we empower those guys. That's what we did a couple days ago. And then the third one is the AIM. This is where we reach high school kids and we help them to have self-awareness, intentionality, and master skill.
Love it. Well, there you have it, guys. This is a worthy task. Is it easy? No. But it is most certainly worth it. I can imagine that if you're watching this, you yourself or you have a relative who can relate to what has been shared. If that is the case, first thing I would say is be encouraged. You are worthy. It is not always going to be as difficult as it may seem to be right now. And it's not always going to be as well as it is right now. We just try our best to take it one day at a time. And so we had Nick here. This is his 3rd time. You understand after watching this why we had him on again. We hope that you continue to support this initiative in any way you can. And until next time, keep being amazing. Your business is always worth it.